Hey everyone, we are back with another episode. We are missing Jesse today, but we have Jayden with us. Jayden Mount is our managing editor here at Extra Inning Softball. You probably have seen a lot of her stories. She does a great job with putting out content for us. She actually has Division I college playing experience and coaching experience, playing at the University of Louisiana Monroe, which is a Division I in the Sunbelt Conference, and then coaching at the University of South Alabama, which is also in the Sunbelt Conference. So we had a good time. We played against each other when I was at Troy and she was at ULM. So we're big Sunbelt girls over here. Thanks, Jayden, for being with us. I feel like you bring a lot of really cool experience and expertise. So I'm really pumped to hear what you have to say. So I just want to jump right into it. And I just want you to talk a little bit about what kids should expect going into college, regardless of if they're already committed, if they're going through a recruiting process now, or even if some people are listening and they're either a parent of a player that is trying to decide whether they want to go and play college or if they're a player themselves. So just give us a little bit of what you feel like girls should expect going into college, whether it's culture wise, whether it's athletic wise, academic wise, you name it. Just let me know what you think about all that and what to expect.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm super excited to be on the podcast today, and super excited that it's finally launched. I know we've been talking about it for a while, but yeah, just going into real, I guess, understanding like what you need for college and as a coach and a player perspective. When I was a coach, I mean, when I was playing, I kind of went into it like I was the best on the team in high school, and then I had a really good travel ball association, Sneaky Cleats. They're out of Tyler, Texas. But we had about 5 or 6 Division I players on that team, so I was getting a lot of competition going into high school ball and then going into college, which I'm very thankful for because you have to earn your spot everywhere you go. But I was the best on my high school team, and I kind of just walked my way into college and
Yeah.
just gonna say, "Oh, I'm the best. I don't really need to work that hard. I'm just gonna earn a spot. Like I'm gonna be the starting shortstop as a freshman." And then I didn't pass my conditioning test my freshman year, and that was a culture shock for sure. And that was very embarrassing. So I knew that I had to figure it out and like hit the ground running hard because they're not going to leave anybody. Like, I mean, they'll leave you behind if you're behind. So I think the biggest thing is make sure you're prepared to start college because it is very different from high school. It's very different from travel ball. And then going into the coaching perspective, we want to make sure that these kids are going into a good program that are going to build lives, not just good softball players. Like we want them to leave this program better than they found it, obviously, which that's why we recruit good kids. We recruited good kids at ULM when I was a graduate assistant, and we recruited good kids at South Alabama. So knowing that they're going to put in the time and effort to prepare to be there, but also like we want to instill those characteristics of a good person when they start a job. Like we want them to be ready to go and not even blink an eye. But I think something different that we did at South Alabama that we didn't do at ULM, we had girls, the freshman girls, come in and start classes at South that summer before their freshman year and just get into the weight room with our strength and conditioning coach, which I think is really, really cool. Like they're going into the fall, like prepared, like they're ready. They know the technique, they know what we're asking of them. So I think that's a really big thing. And just understanding like you're a student before you're an athlete. Because if you don't pass, you do not play. I mean, that was instilled in me from a very small age. So when I got that report card, I better like if you got that report card on Friday, you better be all A's or B's, and or if you're not playing on Saturday. Just understanding that you need to be a student before an athlete.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that that's not as enforced as I feel like it should be because I think a lot of people, I see it a lot in high school and people that are trying to get recruited is they're like, "Oh, well like my grades don't matter. Like I'm not a school person. Like I just don't." And obviously that's with the exception of people that really do, struggle with school, which is really real, but the people that may just not care as much and they don't really put the effort in and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't matter because like I'm going to go get a scholarship." And it's like, "Well, yes, like if you get a scholarship, that's great. But, like you have to get into the college and you have to pass, right?" Like, and that's not a coaching rule. That's not like depending on the coach, that's an NCAA compliance rule. So I think that is something that's interesting and isn't as enforced much. I don't know why. I don't know why that's not something that people
That
don't
one
think about.
more thing.
Yeah.
social media, like, being big now, like, us as coaches, like, look at that stuff. So, you might say, "Oh, well, they're not looking at it. I'm tagging them, but they're not looking at it." Like, we're looking at your stuff, and if there's a bunch of cuss words, a bunch of like, TikTok, we look at your TikTok. So, we look at the kind of people you are on the other side of things. So, like, when I was getting recruited, it was like social media is going to help you, it's going to hurt you, especially with the NIL stuff. You have a bigger platform, so you need to figure out, like, a lot of people are watching your things, like these people that are giving you these sponsorships, like they're looking at your stuff, and I'm sure if you have a bunch of cuss words on your stuff, they're not going to give you that sponsorship. So just make sure your social media is cleaned up, and you're really doing it for the right reasons, because you're wearing a lot more than just your name. Like, it's your university, it's your teammates, and just understanding that, like, it's so much bigger than just yourself. So,
Yeah, yeah, and we actually just talked about social media and kind of the pros and cons and how it can help you and it can also hurt you. So if you haven't listened to that, go check that out. But yeah, I love how you mentioned like the coaches look at that kind of stuff. I feel like TikTok, it definitely wasn't around when we were in high school. Honestly, it was early college for me when TikTok first came out, but I feel like that's like a tricky one because people like, it's cute little trends and they're just doing cute little dances, but then you listen to the words and it's like, "Whoa, like, that 10-year-old should not be dancing to
yes,
that song, like, they shouldn't even be able to listen to that song." So I
yes,
think TikTok can really get you in trouble, but I know for me and I don't know how your coach was at ULM, but I know that we've talked about how our coaches were pretty similar. I know, like, my coach at Troy, she was very, very strict on social media and when we got to school, so I think it's important for girls to realize that it's not just, like, getting recruited that you have to watch your social media. I know for me, we had so many rules on social media when I played at Troy, like, we couldn't post with alcohol,
yep,
we couldn't post any cuss words, of course, or like anything that has cuss words in it. Just little stuff like that, that it sounds like a little tedious, but it matters. And that was mine and my coach's whole point was like, you're representing something bigger than yourself. Like you said, this is not just a you thing. Like you're representing Troy softball. And if you post with 15 beer cans in the back of your picture and you're a freshman in college, so you're not even legal, like what does that reflect about Troy softball and their program? Yeah, so I remember one time, I accidentally back when Twitter when it shows, like,
what you can
what
like.
you like, I accidentally liked a tweet. I did not I to this day, I can promise you I did not know I liked this thing, but it was, like, something inappropriate. I don't even remember what it was. I think I had a cuss word in it or something, and I didn't know, and I got a text from my coach, and she was like, "You need to unlike this. This does not represent Troy softball." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am. I'm so sorry." And I remember after that, and even y'all, even to this day, and I don't know if my coach will ever listen to this, but if she is, I hope she laughs at this. Ever since that day, even now, every time I log out of Twitter, I go to my likes and I make sure I didn't like something that's not appropriate. I still do it. It's a habit. I freaked out. I freaked out after that because I was like, I think I was like a freshman or sophomore, so I was still young. And I, to this day, I have like a habit of before I go out of Twitter, I go to my profile and then I look at my likes and I make sure that I didn't like anything that was bad. And even now, like you can't even see what you like. But again, like it's ingrained in you once you get to that point where you're watching what you're putting on social media, even when you're out of college. To me, it teaches a really good rule of
Yes,
thumb of like you're representing, regardless of what you're doing, you're representing something bigger than yourself, whether it's your faith, whether it's your job, whether it's your family, your parents, like whatever it is. So that's a small little tangent that
yeah.
doesn't really relate to
Well,
anything, but
and
it's
I
so
have a
funny.
story too. I'll keep it short. But when Molly got there to ULM, so she got there my junior year, we wear jeans when we fly with our shirts tucked in, everything. Like, I still
Okay.
to this day tuck my shirt in when I work out. Like, it is ingrained in me. Like, and you probably saw me last year when I coached. My shirt was always tucked in, and Kelly's the same way. But it's funny because when we went down for breakfast, like when we are on an away trip, we have to either have our shirts tucked in, or if we're wearing leggings, like it has to cover our behind and things like that. But Molly put it into perspective. She was like, if you come down and you have a big t-shirt on down to your like knees, and your hair's in a messy bun, and your boss, like your future boss, is sitting in that breakfast area and you have no idea, and you go for a job interview and she's like, "Well, I saw you at breakfast one time.
Yeah.
You're a ULM softball player and you look like an absolute wreck. So I don't think we can do this." So
Yeah.
I mean, that is such a huge thing. It's so small, but it's so big. Like,
It's so small.
yeah.
Yes.
And I just and to this day, like when I go down for breakfast or if I'm in public, like I'm gonna look presentable because you never know. Like, you seriously
Yeah.
so
No, 100%. We did this it was we were called slop kebabs, that's what she called us. She was really strict on, like, our, like, length of our shirt, like you said, we couldn't have our, like, t-shirt, like, really badly sticking out under our sweatshirt, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Because she was like, "That looks sloppy, like, you should tuck your shirt in," like you said, and then put a sweatshirt on. So, yeah, it's just little stuff like that, that I do think that it obviously depends on where you go to school. That's definitely a coach thing, a coach to coach thing, but it doesn't matter where you go, you're gonna have standards like that in some regard, just it depends on what it is, and that's I know in the last episode, me and Jesse were talking about, like, picking a school and knowing what you're looking for, and obviously, you wanna make sure you're looking for a coaching staff that you can, like, respect their standards and you understand their standards. Everyone's cup of tea is different and what they are okay with, aligning with and all that kinda stuff, but, yeah, it's just that standard and that culture that you're representing something bigger than yourself, and I think at least from my perspective, playing college softball, that's something that I expected it because I did have a staff and my travel ball team that was really big on expectations and standards. But I think that is something that people may not realize as much. They think it's just going and playing ball and that's all you do. And yes, you play ball and that is what you're there to do. But it's also a lot of stuff like that where you have rules and you have a culture going into that in travel ball. Do you feel like travel ball prepares kids for college in the sense of the standards and the culture? I know that travel ball teams now are a little bit more spread out, so they don't get to practice as much, and they may not be able to build a culture like a college can. And that's no hate to travel ball organizations. It's just how it is nowadays. Everyone's from everywhere. But do you feel like that affects kids and being able to live up to those standards and handle those expectations?
Yeah, I actually do. Because probably when I know definitely when I was growing up and probably when you were growing up, like you pretty much played the same teams all the time. Like we didn't go to these huge tournaments. Like I went to Colorado once, I played in Oregon once. Like I didn't go to these big tournaments every year. So I'm constantly playing the same teams over and over. So everybody was from the same area. So they got to practice together. But nowadays, like when I'm like from a coaching perspective, like when I'm going out and recruiting, like these kids are from, like when I look at their profile sheet, these kids are from California, they're from Nebraska, Florida, Delaware, like on the same team. And I'm like, how does that even happen? But they just fly them in and to these tournaments and then they just play together just to get recruited. So I do think it hinders that culture aspect of things because like when you get to college, like you're gonna be with these kids, I mean with these teammates 24/7, like more than your family. So I think just finding that culture and finding that community is a big thing. Like going back to my days, like I had a really good travel ball organization. So we got to practice together on Sundays. It was like a 4 hour practice, but now they don't even practice. And so I think that's really hard because the kids aren't coached as well as they were when I was growing up. Like I knew the game. My IQ was really, really good. And I attest that to my parents putting me in an organization that my travel ball coach knew what he was doing. And he's actually Coach Anthony Springer. He's actually just won a national championship at UT Tyler, Division II. He's also a high school coach and he also coaches travel ball. I don't know how you do it, but kudos to you, coach. So like it's just like it's hard for me to sit there and like look when I'm recruiting and like these kids don't know each other and they don't practice together and something happens like a miscue or something happens and the coach doesn't say anything. So I think we need to coach these kids more. And I know like they look at TikToks and they just play all the time, but nobody sits them down and is like, this is what we need to do in this situation. Like they don't communicate anymore on the field, especially like when they fly in. Like if as a shortstop, like your middles are two of the most important people on the field, and if they don't know each other, they're not communicating. Like it's hard to turn a double play. It's probably same thing with you in the outfield. If you don't know your center fielder and y'all aren't communicating, a routine fly ball is probably just going to drop between. And then
Right.
yeah, if a coach is looking at that and he's like, oh well, she just dropped a routine fly ball, we can't have that when we get to college. Like we just need to slow down and teach the game more. Like yes, you get taught the game when you get to college, but you should know these things, like the simple things of softball, like you should know from your travel ball coaches. So I just feel like you need to pick a travel ball organization that's going to help you grow rather than just playing 400 innings in a summer. 'cause it's just you're gonna get burnt out, which is hard to say, but that's just what's gonna happen, especially if you don't know the game.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like I hear a lot from travel ball coaches with the organizational leaders that we've been talking to on our interviews. That's a lot what they say is that the kids don't know the game as much anymore. It's really interesting. I don't know if it's just because travel ball is just so popular now and you just have a team on every corner. And so it's just I don't know the solution. I don't know the cause, but I definitely feel like I hear that a lot from other travel ball organizations and from college coaches that the kids just don't they're not taught the game as much anymore, which is really interesting because I feel like we're playing it more than now than ever, you know? Like they're playing so much over the summer.
I hated doing situational stuff, like, growing up and in practice, like, it just gets redundant, but, like, new things come up every single time you do situation, and my college coaches were very good. Molly and Wodak and Coach Guy, they were really good at slowing the game down for us and, like, really teaching us, like, what we need to do in certain situations, so, I think just finding a good coach, like you said, in college and then in travel ball, like, who's gonna grow the game. I know these big organizations are a lot more known to colleges, but like I look at that kind of stuff. Like, why didn't she go here when she should have gone there? Like, why are we not thinking beforehand? Like, where am I gonna go with the ball before it's even hit to me? And I've heard that a million times. I'm like, ugh, that's so annoying. But like it's so true because you just have to be thinking the game and talking the game. Like a lot of people just chatter, "Hey, you got this." Like talk the game like while you're on the field. Like I think that's a big thing. Just making sure like, "Hey, I'm going too. I got your back." Like different things like that. So
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes with practice, which kind of what we said earlier, they don't practice as much. But going off the college thing, you're practicing every day. You are in 20 hours during the spring. You are doing softball all the time. So the season's really long and the days get super long. You know, you're playing week in, week out, you're playing a midweek, and then you're playing a 3 game series, and then you're having practice every day. I think it can get overwhelming, especially those first few years, just trying to get adjusted. You're playing almost a 60 game schedule. And I think I could be wrong, but if you make it to the postseason, it's even longer. So, how do you think that these girls can get adjusted to that long season? Because I know that in summer ball, they do play a lot of games, don't get me wrong, but it's still not the same as college. So, when you look at the season and how long it is and how hard it is, because at the end of the day, you're playing a 60 game season, you're probably going to go over in some of those games. You might go over for weeks at a time. And so how would you tell girls to kind of be able to get through that slump or get through those days that are really long and hard and really just keep on pushing even when the games and the days and the practice gets so long?
So from a playing perspective, with me, I feel like you've just got to find your why. Like what gets you up in the morning, what keeps you going. Like you can't drink an energy drink before every single practice just to keep you going. Like you've got to find like your reason as to why you're getting up. Is it your parents? Is it just for you? Like you've got to figure out why you're playing softball for a bigger reason. Because 4 years and it's gone. Like you've got to start the real world, which me and Katie wish we were still in college.
Yeah, right. It's got its pros and cons.
Yes, sure. But like my freshman and sophomore year, I was so consumed with softball. Like I didn't know myself outside of softball, which is very sad to say, like looking back at it. And then my junior year, I hit some roadblocks, like because I was all conference my sophomore year. I'd broken a couple records, and then I was expectations just hit me in the face, like punched me, knocked me down. So I think like going into that junior year, I was like, oh, I want to be first team all conference. I want to do this. I want to do that.
Right, right.
I mean, I couldn't even tell a ball from a strike for like the probably 2 months of season, and I was going to my coach every day. I was like, "Coach, what do I do? What do I do?" I was hitting 4 times a week. I mean, 4 times a day, like going to the field and then on top of that practice. And she texted me, I think it was probably 2 weekends into conference, and she said, "Do not come to the field on the off day." I was like, "Are you serious? Like, really?" She said, "Yes, go do something that does not involve softball." And I think me and my friend went to the zoo, and it was probably the best thing that had ever happened to me. I didn't think about softball all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I still went in and hit extra, like, that week, and I finally started to get into motion, like, with my swing. I felt better as a person. I had lost, like, 10 pounds. I was so stressed out, and then that's when I was like, I don't need to put my identity in softball, like, my identity is in Christ." Like, that was my testimony, like, that's when I found the Lord, and ever since, like, that whole junior season and then to senior year and then super senior year, like, I put my faith and everything into Christ. Like, I've got to find something outside of softball that really gets me going and the Lord gets me going. So, I think going into that, like, from a coaching perspective is, like, get your kids to a point where they can find something outside of softball. Because, like, if they're just playing all the time, like, it's such a long season. Like you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, they've got to find themselves outside of softball, and I think that's a big thing, especially playing 60 games because it is absolutely crazy. I think just realize, like, when you get to know your kids, like, that's when you, can figure out what they wanna do outside of softball. Because yes, they come to practice every day, but if I don't know, like, what they wanna do outside of softball, how can I help them, you know? So, I
Right, right.
just helping them, like, guiding them into what they're gonna do after their life, just and it really helped me because my college coach was like, "What like, how are your parents?" Like, she wanted to know who I was and not who softball player was, you know? So,
Yeah.
I think just really finding your identity outside of softball.
Yeah, I love that. You gotta have your why. And I think too, I think coaches in some way underestimate how important they are to the players. Like in a humble way, I think a lot of coaches are like, it's not about me and, I'm here to coach my girls. Like they don't really care to, get to know me or they don't really care to have those conversations that aren't softball related. I think and I think it comes from a good place. I genuinely do. But I think coaches underestimate it. Like, I think they don't realize some of them. Obviously, there are some phenomenal coaches out there, but I think some coaches like they don't realize like no, like your girls want to get to know you too, and they want to have conversations that aren't about softball, and they care about how your day was, and they want to talk to you about their favorite thing that happened at class today. And I think that's where the best coaches are that's what they're best at, is really just getting to know their girls and being able to relate to them and showing them as much as they aren't as much as the players aren't just softball, showing them that their coach isn't just softball either. I don't know, I feel like that's such an important thing for players to have is, like, knowing, "Okay, I can go to my coach about anything." Like, yes, my coach is here for softball and to make me better, but they're also there to make me a better person. And like I need to have a relationship with them in some regard. I don't know, and I guess I could be alone in that, and there might be some people out there that are like, no, I don't really care to really get to know my coach. I'm just there to get in and get out, which to each their own. But I know for me, the coaches that's made the biggest impact in my life are the coaches that cared about me outside of softball. And the best days would be me coming to the field and being like, "Coach, like I got an A on my math test today. Like I studied so hard." So it's the little things like that that I think make a huge difference, especially like you said in the 60 game season where it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies all the time. It's going to be hard, which is great. Like I don't say that to scare anybody because it's so much fun. Like season is so much fun. It's hard, but it can be a lot of fun if you are like you said kind of going at it in a way of I'm just playing the game I love. It's not my identity, and that's really hard to do. Like we could get into a whole other topic of it not being your identity, but in a way, I think I just talking to have a co I was having a conversation with a friend the other day about it, and we were saying, like, yes, it's not your identity. How you do does not affect who you are as a person, but I do think in some regard, it is a part of who you are. So it's that balance of, like, yes, like, softball's a part of me. Me and you would not be where we're at today without softball, so, like, you have to acknowledge that, but then on the other side of it, understanding, like, "Okay, I went 0 for 4. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. That doesn't mean I shouldn't eat dinner. It doesn't mean I shouldn't have any." And I know that sounds really dramatic, but I'm sure there's people out there that are listening that didn't eat dinner one night because they went 0 for 4. I know that's a thing. But yeah, that's so interesting, and I
Yeah.
think that that brings a lot of perspective into it too. Okay, so last thing I really want to touch on, because I know I struggled with it so hard. I'm sure you did too, is after college, right? Like, what are we going to do after softball? And there might be some people that are listening that know exactly what they want to do. And that is awesome, fantastic, lovely, good for you. But I know there's a lot of people also that don't. So, talk to me about, as a player and as a coach, how college and playing softball in college has helped you figure out what you wanna do after college, kinda who you are and what you wanna become once you're done playing softball.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, I my dad coached for 27 years, so that was always in my mind, and I was a coach's kid, so it kind of put it into perspective for me that I wanted to coach, and then my mom was like, "Well, you could be an orthopedic surgeon, you can make all this money," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I wish." Yeah, and then I kind of thought maybe like a physical therapist, like stay in the sport but make a little bit more money because us coaches we don't make enough, and
For the
I
hours you put in, you do not.
yes, no, and you can all these coaches that are listening can probably attest to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I my freshman and sophomore year, like I said, I was literally just softball, softball, softball all the time. I really didn't think about it. And then fall of my freshman year when Coach Molly came, I we were doing an individual one day and she's like, "Do you want to be my GA when you graduate?" And I was like, I would love to do that, get my master's, stay in the game. And so it kind of put it in perspective for me, like I wanted to coach in college. And so, well, I was going to GA for 2 years, but God said, haha, COVID. So I got to play another year. So I only was a graduate for 1 year or a grad assistant for 1 year. But my super senior year, so 21, when I was still playing, Coach Molly asked everyone what they wanted to be when they grew up. And everyone filled out a little thing on a Google sheet. And Molly went around and got a person from all of these different occupations that everyone wanted to be. And so we usually did it was hang out with the Hawks. So it was our big fundraiser night, but because of COVID, we couldn't do that because there were so many people in one room and obviously the social distancing thing was in effect. And she did that and we called it like it was kind of like a 7-minute speed dating thing. And we went around to each occupation and just kind of asked them questions, talked to them. Obviously,
That
we
is
had
so
our
cool.
masks on and we were literally 6 feet apart on the table. So we just got to kind of ask questions and things like that. She allowed us to dress in like business professional clothing. So, like, I had a blazer on, just like a job interview. So, I think she really, like, if you want to describe a coach, and I'm sure Coach Mullins was the same way, like, she prepared me for life. For that, I'm very grateful. So, I kind of think like you need to find a coaching staff if this is what you want to do, like that's gonna prepare you for life. When she says like her two goals is to have a diploma in one hand and a ring in the other. So I think that's really cool. Win a championship, but also get your degree. So I think that's kind of something that helped me figure out. And then obviously she gave me the opportunity to be a graduate assistant. And then with that, I went on to South Alabama. I loved it at South Alabama. I think those two programs are very similar in their culture, in their values, in their standards. So it was a very easy transition for me to go to South. Because she prepares people for life. Coach Clark does. So I think that's really, really cool. So finding that balance between softball and life when you're picking a college, I think that's very important.
Yeah, no, it is. And knowing what you respond well to and what you want to become. I know for me, I went into college and to be quite honest, I was like, I'm gonna get my MRS degree. I'm just gonna get a bit, something easy, and then I'm gonna meet my husband in college and I'm gonna get married and be a housewife. That's literally, and if you knew, and you know me, Jaden, but people that if you knew me now, like, it's funny that I say that. And I remember, I swear it was like my coach's mission to like be like, "No, Katie, like, that's not, you are literally getting a degree. That's no." Because I think I told her that at one point. I think I told, and she, like, kinda laughed, and I was a freshman, so she was just like, "Okay, yeah, whatever." But I think that, yeah, I think my coach, she's so big on empowering women and making them strong, independent women when they graduate, that they don't have to rely on somebody else to support them. Well, I'm not saying it's a great thing to get married, and that's obviously a beautiful thing in and of itself, but she was like, she just instilled in us that, like, we're strong women, like, we can do hard things, and that's the biggest thing that I learned at Troy, that I think I've can carry on for the rest of my life is you can do hard things. And obviously, back in college, that looked like, hey, you can run that extra sprint, you can do that extra stadium, you can log roll across the field and not die. Obviously now I hope to goodness I never have to run another stadium, like stuff like that. It's a lot different, but mentally I feel like she prepared me so well of just like, you can do whatever you set your mind to. If you believe you can do it and you are surrounded by people that will support you in it, like you can and you will. And so I think that that was a big thing that I know I learned in college is just like being like, no, like I'm going to be a strong woman and I'm going to do this on my own. Like, and I'm going to get my job. I'm going to be a big girl. I'm not going to rely on anybody else and I'm going to go get it, like, and I think that's a very common theme in a lot of softball programs is just building strong women, like, and it fires me up just thinking about it because it's so, so important, and I think that I'm biased, I think you can't really get that anywhere else if you don't like, it's hard to get that if you're not in college athletics. I'm not saying you can't, but I think it's really difficult because you are surrounded by women that are strong and independent, and they just wanna empower and grow these athletes into strong and independent women so they can go and inspire and empower the next generation. So that's super cool, and I definitely feel like we both had coaches that did a great job at that.
For sure.
So, yeah. Well, it's been fun.
Has been
Thank
fun.
you, Jaden, for being on a call. I'm sure we will definitely be talking to you again at some point. But yeah, y'all stay tuned for our next episode, and we will talk to you guys later.